Some of y'all are literal puppets being played around by whatever the narrative your faves put, and it's fucking stupid. Hey, I'm Anya Hits, and today I want to talk about the cult fandoms. The ones with the black and white thinking that cannot take any criticism about their faves. The fans who act like criticizing their favorite idol is the biggest crime on earth. These are the kinds of fans I like to call cult followers or cult fandoms, people who defend their favorites no matter what, refuse to acknowledge any valid criticism, and treat every opinion that isn't praise like it's a personal attack. So, let's get into it. The first fandom I want to talk about is Dive, IV's fandom. Now, I don't think Dive is the biggest example of a cult fandom, but I do think they're heading in that direction. I'd say it's about 70%, while the other 30% are still pretty reasonable and can have normal discussions. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of Dives struggle to accept the opinion that IV members might simply be coworkers rather than a family. The moment someone says that, people immediately pull out compilation videos of the members laughing together, hugging, or joking around, as if that proves they're one big family. But here's my perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being coworkers. K-pop groups are created by companies. Members are brought together, trained together, and if the chemistry works, great. If it doesn't, they're still expected to work professionally. That's completely normal. Being close at work doesn't automatically mean you're a family. Plenty of people have amazing relationships with their colleagues without considering them family, and I think fans should stop treating coworkers like it's an insult. It isn't. The second topic is Wonyoung. Personally, there have been moments where I haven't liked some of her behavior or certain clips that have circulated online. Those moments have left me with an impression that I don't personally enjoy. And that's okay. People are allowed to have different opinions about idols. However, whenever someone criticizes those moments, I often see fans immediately dismissing everything instead of discussing it. It becomes less about whether the criticism is fair and more about defending Wonyoung no matter what. Another thing fans seem unable to accept is that Wonyoung is clearly the center of attention in IV. Whether it's because of her popularity, brand value, or recognition, she naturally receives more focus than the other members. I don't even think that's a bad thing. From a business perspective, it makes sense. She's one of the biggest reasons many casual fans know IV in the first place. What bothers me is when fans refuse to acknowledge that reality. Instead, they'll point to the few times she had a less flattering outfit or didn't receive something and use that as proof that everyone is treated exactly the same. To me, it's obvious that Wonyoung is the face of the group, and that's perfectly fine. Every group has members who receive more attention than others. Overall, I think Dive has a habit of dismissing opinions they don't like instead of engaging with them. Sometimes the response is changing the topic. Sometimes it's bringing up unrelated examples, and sometimes it's acting like any criticism automatically comes from hate. Also, at the end of the day, fans should stop feeling pressured to prove that every group is one big happy family. We don't know these idols personally, and we don't need to. They can be close friends, they can simply be coworkers, or they can be somewhere in between. None of those possibilities make the group any less successful. The second fandom I want to talk about is Satine's fandom, or whatever we're calling it right now, because I've seen a few different names floating around. Now, technically, this isn't a K-pop group. It's a global girl group. But they're under HYB. The training system and rollout are heavily inspired by K-pop, and the overall structure reminds me a lot of groups like Cat's Eye. So I think it's fair to include them in this discussion. Now, what's crazy is that they haven't even debuted yet, and the fandom is already giving me major cult fandom vibes. A lot of that comes from the fanbase that formed during the survival show Dream Academy. Emily, Samara, and Lexi were a part of that show, so they had a stable fanbase. Those fans have stayed incredibly loyal, which isn't a bad thing on its own. The problem is that some of them seem unwilling to accept any criticism. The biggest example for me is the reaction to Sakura making the lineup instead of Ayana. People were criticizing the company's decision, and I think that's completely fair. Personally, I would have preferred Ayana because I think she was more ready to debut. Now, let me be clear, this is not Sakura's fault. She didn't choose herself for the lineup. The company made that decision. But instead of discussing whether the company made the right choice, Some fans started defending every aspect of the decision, as if it couldn't possibly be questioned. Personally, I don't think companies should prioritize potential over someone who's already more prepared to debut. Potential is great, but debuts should be based on who's ready right now, not who might become amazing in a few years. From what I saw during the show, Ayana fit the concept better and, in my opinion, delivered stronger performances overall. That doesn't mean Sakura can't improve. She's still training, she's still growing, and she absolutely has room to become a great performer. But saying that isn't the same as saying she should have debuted over Ayana. And, because the members have such different strengths and fan bases, I wouldn't be surprised if this fandom eventually becomes heavily divided into solo stans. Overall, my issue isn't with Sakura. It's with the fans who act like every criticism is hate and every company decision has to be defended. That's exactly the mindset that starts turning a fandom into a cult fandom instead of a healthy one. The third and last fandom I want to talk about today is Monsties, Babymonster's fandom. Out of all the fandoms I've mentioned today, this one stands out to me because it seems noticeably younger than most. And I think that plays a huge role in how the fandom reacts to criticism. I'm not saying every Babymonster fan is a kid, because that's obviously not true. But a large portion of the online fanbase seems to be very young, and younger fans are often more emotionally attached to their favorite group. Because of that, criticism can feel personal to them. To me, that's exactly why the fandom gives off cult-like vibes. One thing I've noticed is that people don't just defend the members, they'll also defend YG Entertainment, even when the criticism is clearly aimed at the company's decisions. And that's something I don't understand. Support the artists all you want. Support the music. But why are you defending a multi-million-dollar company as if it's your job? The biggest example for me is Chiquita and her solo stage performance. She's still a minor, and I personally don't think a minor should be given performances, styling, or choreography that can be interpreted as overly mature. Let me be clear, I am not criticizing Chiquita herself. I'm criticizing the adults around her. Whether the performance was her idea or not honestly doesn't matter to me. It's the company's responsibility to protect its younger artists. That's literally part of their job. People often respond by saying, she's confident or she's slaying. And sure, she's an incredibly talented performer. I don't disagree with that. But talent isn't the point. The point is that she's still a minor performing on massive stages in front of millions of people, including adults. Companies should take that responsibility seriously. So when people criticize YG for those decisions, I don't understand why some fans immediately jump to defend the company instead of asking whether the criticism has some merit. Another example is Hyun. I think she's an extremely talented vocalist. She has incredible power, great range, and she's capable of delivering some genuinely impressive high notes. But there are also performances where, in my opinion, she pushes her voice too hard. Sometimes it sounds more like shouting than controlled singing, and I personally don't enjoy that style. That's just my opinion. Instead of discussing it, though, some fans immediately act like saying that means you're calling her untalented, which isn't what I'm saying at all. Someone can be an amazing singer and still have performances you don't like. Those two things can exist at the same time. Overall, I think Monsties has a tendency to treat criticism as hate rather than as normal part of discussing music and performances. That's what gives me the impression of a cult-like fandom. And, honestly, Babymonster is probably the fandom I have the most to say about. I could easily make an entire video breaking down the fandom, the company, and the group's management in much more detail. But that's a conversation for another day. For now, let's move on. Now, I'm not hating on any of these groups. Yes, I criticize some idols, some fandoms, and some company decisions, but criticism and hate are not the same thing. These are simply my opinions. If you think I'm wrong about something, tell me why. Educate me. Have a discussion with me. Just don't act like criticism is automatically hate. Also, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of these cult-like fandoms seem to have very black and white thinking. To them, you either completely love an idol or you completely hate them. There's no middle ground. But there is a middle ground. You can love an artist and still criticize them when they make a mistake. You can enjoy a group's music while disagreeing with some of their decisions. You can praise a company for doing something wrong. That's called being objective. One thing that especially confuses me is when fans defend companies no matter what. Companies are businesses. They make good decisions and they make bad ones. There's nothing wrong with criticizing them when you think they've handled something poorly. In the cases of Saint Satine and Babymonster, most of my criticism wasn't even directed at the members, it was directed at the companies and the decisions they made. So when fans take those criticisms personally or rush to defend the company, I genuinely don't understand it. At the end of the day, my approach to K-pop is pretty simple. If I like a song, I'll say I like it, even if it's from a group I don't usually follow. If I dislike a song from one of my favorite groups, I'll say that too. Liking a group doesn't mean you have to praise everything they do, and disliking a group doesn't mean they can never make something good. That's how I think every fandom should approach K-pop. Anyway, that's all for today's video. Let me know whether you agreed or disagreed with my takes, and more importantly, tell me why. I'm always interested in hearing different perspectives as long as the discussion stays respectful. This definitely won't be the last video in this series because there are plenty more fandoms to talk about, especially some of the bigger boy group fandoms. So if you enjoyed this video, stay tuned. Until next time, bye.